Hello and welcome to this supplementary video for week 12 because I wanted to make sure that we got good coverage on this next topic because it is rather important since the semester is drawing to a close. We are talking now about the final animation, and this is your final 20 seconds of video that you are going to create based on some of the things that you have learned in this class and some things that we haven't yet gotten to. And I want to make sure we have enough time to get to, or at least represent the topics that I want you to be familiar with. So just to recap, the final animation is going to be 20 seconds. Now brace yourself because it's going to be interesting. 20 seconds of interesting animation, because basically animation can be simple. We want to give you the ability to do something that goes beyond just the basics, though. You know, if you like have words moving left and right or something like that, I mean, anyone can do that. We want to sort of go beyond the basics, and for that reason, I'm going to be introducing dynamics today, because I think you'll find that this is a way that you can take your work to the next level without actually doing a lot of work. I mean, honestly, this could make your job that much easier if you let it. And so I want your best objects. You know, work on your in Modeler, make something interesting. Don't just have spheres, don't just have boxes, do something interesting. Your best lighting. Don't be afraid to experiment with lights. You know, see what happens. Put a light here, move lights, and things like that. Your best camera work. Do something with the cameras. Make them move around. Maybe have more than one camera and then edit the video together in Premiere. We can talk about that as well. And this all has to be high resolution video. You have to output this in HD. You know, whatever you want to do, but make sure it's got to be at least 1080p or 1080i, one or the other. And you can do it in VR if you want to. Impress me. That's basically the bottom line. Impress me, impress yourself. Now, with that in mind, let me talk to you about dynamics, because dynamics is the next big topic that we're going to cover. And really, it's going to introduce the end of the course, because there's only so far you can go beyond that. Once you are in dynamics, basically, it's a whole universe that you can explore and play with. But really, I don't think we'll have time for much else. It's a level of cool for Lightwave that we haven't seen yet. So we got objects interacting with objects, the forces of nature. You can create those forces. You control the universe. Simply put, you control the universe. And this is just going to be like a little taste of what it is. You can create gravity, or you can defy gravity. It's up to you. Your objects can have varying weights. You can have light objects, you can have heavy objects, and the gravity will work on them. You can put things in motion and see what happens when they hit other things, that sort of thing. You can include forces of impact. You can break things. You can have things bounce. Those are all things that you can do. You can create wind and things like that. So this is just the beginning, and we'll talk about these things as we go along. Okay, so as usual, we're going to start in Modeler. And what I want to do is show you just the very basics of what you can do with animation and dynamics. And so we're just going to create a little universe here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a floor. And so it doesn't have to be a huge floor, just has to be a floor. And so we'll go ahead and put the floor down low so that we can put things on it. And so that is going to be one layer. So we're going to go to another layer, put that layer in the background so that you can see it. And what I want to do is I want to create a rather unusual object. So I'm going to make a box here as well. And so basically, I'll just put it anywhere. I guess it doesn't really matter at the moment. So right now the box is kind of sitting on that table. And I'm going to bring the box up a little bit, make it a little bit longer. And so if you look at it over here, you can see about what it is. And that's it for the box. And so then the only other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to malform the box a little bit. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go into point mode, which I already am in. I'm going to select those 2 points, and I'm going to move them. And so I'm going to create a box that is deformed. And so we'll make it like that. And so this box has now become a ramp. Then on this layer, And I'm going to put these in the background. I'm going to create a ball. And I'm just going to put that ball right here. And just for the heck of it, I'm going to go to my numeric pad, and I'm going to make sure that the ball is the same radii so that it is a sphere. So that's my ball, and I'm going to have the ball sitting just a little bit above that surface. Then I'm going to go into polygon mode. I'm going to copy that ball, and I'm going to go to the next layer and put all these layers in the background by holding down the Shift key. And I'm going to edit paste that ball. And then I'm just going to go ahead and move this like so. And so I'm going to put that back a little bit, and that's where that's going to be. Then I'm going to make a new layer holding down the Shift key, and I'm going to put that layer in the background, and I'm going to edit paste that again, and I'm moving on this axis, so I've got that going on. And I'm only going to make one more. So hold down the Shift key, make a new layer, put that in the background, edit paste. And I'm going to move that ball up here. And so there we have our little universe. It's a very small universe, and it isn't not much is going to be required from it. But we're going to start with the basics. And so just for the fun of it, I'm going to program some surfaces. So I've got that selected. I'm going to change surface. I'm going to call this one blue. I'll make it red. And I'm going to make it a red ball. Then I'm going to go to this layer, and I'm going to grab all of those polygons. Change surface. I'm going to call this green. So that will be a green ball. And this one, change surface. I'll call that blue. Did I have a blue one already? Well, just in case. I'll call this yellow. And that will be yellow. And over here, I will grab this one, change surface. I'm going to call that black. And that's close enough to black. And then for the remaining two layers, I will just grab this. I'm going to call that ramp. And I'm going to grab this. I'm going to call that floor. And, well, I guess right now we can change those later. I'm going to save this, save object. And it's in the wrong week now. I'm going to call this dynamics. Then I'm simply going to open it up here in layout. I'm going to load the object. And you'll see all that stuff. Okay, so I got the red ball, the green ball, the yellow ball, and the black ball, and the ramp and the rest of it are black as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Surface Editor, go to Floor, and we're not really going to put elaborate surfaces here. For the floor, I'm going to make that kind of a gray color, just for the heck of it. For the ramp, You can probably see it better if we make that white. How about? And there's one other change I want to make. I want to go back here, and I want to make that just a little bigger. So I'm just going to grab that polygon and move it out just a little bit this way. And give it a little bit more width. And just a little bit more here too. And you'll see why as we go along. Okay, so I save the object again. And if I go here, I will notice that my platform has gotten a little bit larger. So what I want to do is I want to drop this ball and have it hit those other ones. And without dynamics, there's no way you could do that. It wouldn't do anything. But we're gonna force the computer to understand things like gravity. Now, just one other thing. Let's go through these balls and turn on smoothing so that they're, don't need to do that with the floor, but I'm going to make the balls more smooth. And yellow, smooth. And for the red ball, how about some specularity? Yeah, make that a nice glossy finish here. And we'll even turn on the reflection, because why not? And for the green ball, same thing. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. We'll make that one partially transparent, though, and we'll give it a double-sided nature. So that's a marble. And so for the black ball, we'll give that specularity, kind of like a gumball. Reflection a little bit. And maybe a little bit of glossiness. And for the yellow ball, specularity. Let's make that one reflective, but also semi-transparent. And we'll give that a double-sided nature so you can see inside it. And so there's our collection of marbles. And so the rest of this stuff, we won't really do much with that. Although, let's say for the floor, let's make the floor reflective and glossy. Specularity, some glossiness. So if we were to go to virtual progressive render, that is what we're seeing here. So we're almost ready to begin. So I'm going to go back to there, and I'm going to look at the camera. Let's see what the camera sees. Camera sees that. So what I want to do is I want to move the camera in, and right-hand click, I move it up, and then I'm going to change the modify to rotate and rotate it down. And so now we're going to create a simple animation. Now the thing that we're not going to do is we're not really going to work very hard on the animation because we don't have to. I'm going to get that red ball a little bit higher, and rather than moving it higher here, I'm just going to go back here and find it. I believe it was the last one. And I'll put the ramp in preview. And I'm just going to move it upwards. Just like that. And I'll save that. And so I'm going to go back to perspective for a second. And now's where the fun begins. There is a tab up here called FX Tools. Go to FX Tools, and you get a whole bunch of possibilities here. I'm going to grab that red ball, and I am going to tell this computer that that is a rigid body. So a rigid body is a body that has weight. Now here's where the magic begins. If I begin to move the animation pointer, you'll see that that ball falls. It goes right through everything and down through the bottom of the universe. And so that may not be all that useful to you, but there's more. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the floor, still in FX Tools. I want to make the floor a static body. A static body will not move. It's like it's fixed in space. So that is a static body. And if I do that, I use the same thing. I move the animation, and the ball doesn't go through the static body, but it does go through the ramp. So the ramp, we will also want to make a static body, even though we could do that more than one way. Let's see what happens when we do that. Now suddenly, the ball behaves like a ball would if it encountered a ramp. And then, as you might imagine, we're going to make these rigid bodies. So all of those are now rigid bodies like that. Now let's see what happens. Okay, could be better. So one of the things you might notice, since we don't know exactly how many frames we're starting with, you might see that there's still some animation going to be happening by the time we reach the end. So I'm going to add a few frames here. I'm going to take that up to 500 frames. So when I do that, the animation continues to go, and so basically all the balls fall down. And let's see how that looks if I play it back. If I play it back, hit the little play button, you can see that it's not all that interesting, but it does work. So eventually everything falls off. And that's probably what we want. But let's look at a few things. I'm going to look at the red ball for a second here, and I'm going to go to Item Properties. And this is where we get this thing, and this is called Bullet Dynamics. And so right now we're looking at a rigid body, and we haven't named these layers yet, but we could. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that rigid body heavier. I'm going to add another decimal place here. I'm going to make it denser. So if I do that, it behaves a little bit differently. It doesn't seem to want to roll as much. Actually, it looks like it glitched there. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. Because that doesn't make any sense. Let's see what it's doing. Oh, it's on the other side of the balls. Okay, so it went around them for some reason. So not that the density did that, but I'm going to turn down the friction so that it has less rolling resistance. And I'm going to make it a little bit more bouncy. Let's just see what that would do. Oh, that bounced right off. Okay. So maybe too much bouncing. And see, this is where the fun comes in. You can do all kinds of crazy things. And one thing you can also do, since I know it's going a little bit the wrong direction, I'm just going to move it this way a little bit. See if that matters. So if it's starting out there, okay, I like that. Kind of like a little pool shot. Cool. And so that's what I'm going to go with. That's what I want to see. So if I go to my camera view, this is what I'm given. And if I go to Virtual Progressive Render, that's kind of nice. And so I want to take that up to 251 frames. And so to render that, I'm going to go into the Render tab. I'm going to go to Render Globals. So I'm only using one camera now. I'm going to make it a high resolution camera. So that would be 1920. Because remember, you have to use high resolution by 1080. So we got high resolution camera. And we're going to take it up to, say, 270. It's as far as we want to go. And the output, I'm going to save it as RGB. I'm going to make a folder called Frames. And I'm going to call this Dynamics A. And so that may be it. And if I were to go to function F10, and I don't want it to go all the way to frame 500, so I say no. And I always say no to that. And so it's off. Okay, now at this point you notice the animation is sped up significantly because really we only have one reflective object on there, so every frame is starting to look the same. And so at this point I'm just going to go ahead and stop the animation. Now I can do that. Well, you can see that little black ball is still falling. Okay, so I can do that because at this point the frames are being made. If this were a video being compiled, it would not compile the rest of the video, or it could do so badly. So I'm just going to abort here with the frames I've already got because I don't really need all of them. And then I'm just going to shut down this. And so here in Premiere, I'm going to make a new project. I'm going to call this Dynamics. I'll put this in week 12, the B section. I'm just going to select this folder, and that's pretty much it. And we're not really going to need to do that much in Premiere, but we could. And so here's our basic board. The project window is empty, the timeline's empty, the program screen has nothing to display. And I'm just going to go ahead and import those frames. If I go to Import, and if I'm in the proper folder, I would see frames there. And I'm just going to grab the first one as usual, Image Sequence. And didn't take long to do that. And I'm just going to drag that there. And it isn't a very long sequence. Let's see what happens if I play it. There it is. And so I can also add one other thing to this. If I want to control how long it sits there, I can do File, Import. And here I'm just going to go to the very last frame. Don't check Image Sequence. So there is an empty frame. I'm just going to sit that there. And so basically my video will begin. And notice when it reaches that point, we don't notice a difference. It just extends that last frame a little bit longer. And then if I export this, I'm just going to export media. And it's H.264. Everything else should be the same. And the file name will be dynamic_demo. And I'm just going to hit export because it's just going to blow through that within a few seconds. And if I go into Dynamics Demo, if I just double click on that, we'll see that is our finished product. And it'll play again, I think. Boom, boom. And that is just the beginning of what you can do with this program. And so the reason I showed you that today was just to give you a taste of what's possible and what you can do if you want to. And this is how you can approach the final animation. And if you do it as a series of dynamics, or maybe a bunch of dynamics happening together, the actual animation part isn't all that difficult. You're basically just setting it up and letting it go and see what happens. So just something I want you to think about.